or excuse me, the recorder.
Okay, let's call to order the meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee for April 12th at 3 p.m. And I don't have a minutes.
Not till the 29th of March, they'll be in
Oh, that'll be in 29th.
the packet.
I guess I missed that. Okay, so we'll skip that part. So we have architectural review of one item today. It's the city antenna permit 23-103 dish wireless telecom facility. We have a presentation, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So this is an application for a dish wireless facility. Just to give you a little background, it's located at the San Gregorio Park, which is public open space. It does have several other wireless facilities at it. I believe it's Verizon and T-Mobile. We have some photo examples of it in your packet, but this requires a city antenna permit due to it's located on public property. There was antennas at this exact location. However, those have since been decommissioned, and it's been over 1 year, so a new CAP is required.
Are they still on there?
There's some equipment still on there, and as part of the conditions of approval, if the project moves forward, it would be conditioned to have that equipment removed.
So it's a different leasee of the pole and property.
Correct.
That's the pole in question, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, just adjacent to the, well, fast forward in here, yeah, on the light standard. So yeah, it's just adjacent to the basketball court and the public restroom there. So the restroom has a existing equipment enclosure that was previously utilized, as well as the light standard just behind it.
What are the two stores?
Location.
Yeah, so
there's two.
the ground mounted equipment
Oh,
is
okay.
adjacent to the structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there's also ground mounted equipment across the
parking lot.
little walkway. Correct?
Right.
Oh,
Well,
Some
near
over
here.
by the transformers and, yeah, just directly across that sidewalk, isn't there, there'll be some new equipment?
where the project site label is?
Uh-huh.
I didn't,
Here, over here, where the mouse is.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh,
On
I'll take a picture of that.
LS2, they've got Verizon equipment, transformers, meters, but this is Dish Mobile, so that is, okay, that's not part of this project though.
Correct.
So the telco vault and manhole is NIC. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, there are other carriers. So there's other equipment that's on the park site. So as part of this, would result in equipment and antennas on the light standard, as well as new ground mounted equipment in that enclosure. So the 6-panel antennas, those will actually be about 8 feet lower than where the existing antennas were. So it will be lower, and that's probably the most important point. Typical equipment included with this type of facility. Again, here just kind of illustrating a little bit closely with the site plan is reflected in the aerial in terms of the ground mounted equipment and the light standard. And then here we have two alternatives were provided by the applicant. The alternative one was provided with the initial application submittal. However, upon review of the application, and in comparison with that to the wireless master plan, we reached out to the applicant to see if they would be amenable to a more flush-mounted design, which is seen elsewhere at the park. And so this is the initial, which has a halo configuration. And here you can see the existing pole there with some of the equipment, not all of what was originally there. And then this is the proposed alternative 2. So I think that this alternative 2 is more closely representative of the guidance from the wireless master plan. The equipment would be painted to match the light standard.
So it's there, it's a big difference.
Yeah, and this is pretty consistent with the other two poles that are out there aside. Those are actually appear to be a little bit more bulky. And so basically staff's looking for a recommendation from the design review subcommittee. The project from this point, if it's a recommendation of approval, would be then moving forward to the zoning administrator for decision. So that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant obviously is available for any questions, and I just have a quick comparison of the alternative 1 and alternative 2, just if you have any discussion points, and then here we have the existing examples here, so I think you can see that the proposed alternative 2 is probably would be the best out there.
You mean this?
that is out there right now. Yeah, and I can see that from the freeway.
Oh, the one that's
Yeah,
tucked,
the scaffolding going around it. So
Is that what that's supposed to be? What's that a picture of?
well, that's more current.
Yeah, that's right now.
Yeah, right now. Yeah.
That's this
That's
morning.
this is before the scaffolding.
What's with the scaffolding?
But
I think they're doing. I'm not sure. I would only assume that they're either doing repairs or changing out some of
the antenna configuration here looks different than on there.
It probably is.
Yeah, they've added more antennas here.
Yeah.
I count like 2 or 3 more antennas out.
Yeah, it looks like 8 likely.
Yeah. So is this the configuration you think you're trying to match with
Well, I think.
with the proposal?
Well, I would like the applicant to speak to
Okay.
that a little bit closer. Obviously, the plans are reflective of alternative 1. That was what was submitted. Staff felt like the updated visual simulations would be sufficient enough to illustrate the proposed design, and if supported by the design review subcommittee, the plans would be revised prior to the zoning administrator hearing to reflect that. But I think from my perspective it would be a more streamlined design, adhere to the building or the structure where those appear. Like there's some mounting brackets and they're a little bit further out.
Yeah.
So this would be a more flush mounted design, which is what
This is almost in between, really.
Yes.
Proposal 1 and 2.
right.
Yeah.
So would you, John, agree that the proposal on the right appears to comply with the either flush-mounted antennas using low-profile mounting bracket, part of the, what are we going to call them, guidelines?
I guess the guidelines from the wireless master plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is that a decision that could have been made at ministerial level?
No, because the facility has been abandoned for over a year, so it has to go back through.
Do the whole thing, but if
Yeah.
it complies architecturally, which it
Correct.
appears to do.
Correct. And also reviewed this with Jonathan Lightfoot, and he was, supportive of the alternative too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't have any questions. Do you guys have any?
I do have a question, and it is not part of our review today. You are both mobile and telephone? Is that correct? This is part of Boost?
This is
Dish.
this is Dish Wireless,
Okay.
and so they're going to be entirely a new mobile network. They're rolling out a whole nationwide, brand new network.
Okay.
They're attempting to set up camp to compete with Verizon and Sprint. Or Sprint no longer exists, but T-Mobile.
I think that was part of a trade-off, right? When they got some.
Yeah, it was part of the
spectrum.
frequency
They got
spectrum trade-offs.
They got new spectrum, and then the FCC said, "Okay, but you gotta
Yeah,
stand this up."
and so the owner of Dish saw the opportunity and said, "Okay, I want to jump in the wireless game." And so he bought up a whole bunch of spectrum and said, "I'm going to launch a wireless network."
And he's
So
gonna go 5G native, right out of the gate.
I believe that's
Yeah.
the technology being used. Yeah.
My only concern, and it doesn't affect, I think, what we're doing here,
Mhm.
is with all the complaints we've got and all the discussions, and I was reviewing, all the reviewing of how dangerous they are, and we have no say in that. But this is becoming like a solar farm or a wind farm. We're getting so many in this area. Can we limit and start taking advantage of saying, enough's enough? At what point does it become a health issue when you get so many towers this close to kids? One tower, we have no say in. Two towers, maybe, maybe not. But now we're up to 3, and more could be asking for here. And
Well, I can give
there's
you a
no
preliminary.
discussion on the Cancer Society pages or anything beyond a tower. That's all they address. People being near a tower. What happens when you're near 3, 4, 5, 6? And should we start looking at some way of making sure we don't kill ourselves by saying, hey, keep putting them here in a neighborhood park, and it's turns up being unsafe at some point in time.
Yeah, so the simple
Because-
answer to that is that the city does not have any ability to regulate the number of towers, since
But
one
the
is
location, though.
So the location, since the city owns this property, the city can make any determination it wants. The FCC regulates the RF from one tower and multiple towers, and they all basically fit in the same
And they're
box.
putting up more and more antennas on the same tower.
Right, and so the part of the thing is to keep in mind is that the FCC requires coverage from its permittees. So if they have permits from the federal government to provide this type of communication facility, they have to provide the coverage. There's a problem with us saying there's too many carriers at this one location. The concept here is that it's almost like a quasi-public utility where the private carriers are charged with rolling out that technology to its customers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be co-location considerations. And that's just due to the fact that the carriers have to roll out this technology to customers in the United States. So we're always going to see co-location. However, since the FCC has said that local jurisdictions cannot take into account the health effects, whether it's one tower or multiple towers, they're all precluded from local regulation, and there's no trigger of, well, once we've got more than 3 here, then we can deny it based on health effects. As the owner of the property, the city can say we don't want this here. If this was in the private, if this was in the public right of way, and they were proposing facilities on like light poles and that type of thing, there would be no discretion at all on the city's part.
I'm more worried about the parks.
Yes.
And just the appearance of.
Well, let me offer a couple of things. First of all, the standards that the FCC has set up are effectively cumulative in terms of the emissions of the RF frequencies or the energy, however you want to phrase it. In a situation where, like this park, where you have, I think there's 3 carriers kind of at that southerly end, you could say, hey, to various carriers, we want a cumulative study, not just an individual study. And that will tell you what your cumulative impacts are and whether or not it's below the thresholds that the FCC has set as this is safe, this is not safe, whatever those are. Like in this case, we're off by ourselves, thousands of feet away from, or hundreds of feet away, I'm not sure exactly the distances, but so we're not going to necessarily be a huge contributor to that soup, if you will, at the other end where there's a lot more. But generally speaking, at this height and at the distance from the ground to the antennas, your impact levels are very low. If you're on a rooftop and you're an AC guy working on units, you're a lot closer to the antennas. That's why there are rules that say
Health problem on top of the south
Oh, yeah, the one.
tomato thing for
Yeah.
employees.
so. That's why there's different levels. There's occupational levels, and then there's general public levels. And occupational, there are requirements for markings or striping on the ground or different things to alert people like, hey, you don't want to stand right in front of the antenna on the rooftop because you're exposing yourself to certain levels.
I would probably recommend that we consider, not necessarily on this project yet, but in the future, calling for a cumulative study of, as we get so many antennas, that should probably be done, because that's not within our purview today.
Sure, yeah, I'm just here offering
No, I appreciate the education
information
there.
because I have
That's great
experience
education.
in that.
And
'Cause that
also
does
then
come up
on,
from time to time.
like the hotel down south.
Right.
Somebody's gonna have to tell those AC workers that they're standing next to a cell tower antenna when they're
Yes,
fixing
for a
it.
pretty limited amount of time. You're talking about servicing the mechanical.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we run into this with window cleaners and all the different type of occupations that end up on a rooftop or hanging off the side of a building for different reasons. And so that's why there are standards in a typical report. There will be recommendations that are outlined and say, okay, for this scenario, here's the safety stuff that you need to put in place to be compliant. And that way it alerts people like, oh, you're going onto a rooftop with an RF environment, you need to look out for this. And it'll be, whatever those solutions are. Sometimes it's, a handful of cones or striping on the roof that kind of outlines like, not in this area. Different things of that
I
nature.
appreciate that input. That's great. Architecturally, it appears to meet the standard.
Yeah, I think John had a good suggestion. I mean, because the RF engineer at first is always thinking like, what's my simplest installation? And the simplest installation functionally is to put all the antennas at the exact same elevation, because then his pattern is simpler for him to manage. Stacking them like this, he just has to be a little more careful with adjusting beam width and all of that stuff. But I agree with you, this is much more streamlined. And we didn't have time to get our drawings cut up with the photo simulations. My artist can take this and she can play with it 10 different ways in a couple of days, but the drawings take a little bit longer, as I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah.
So everything here is sort of already here, right? And the enclosure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
it's
is a really simple one. I wish all of mine were this simple. Yeah, there's an existing pole. Oh, there's an existing equipment enclosure. This is fantastic. Actually, there's still conduit in the ground that connects the two.
Oh,
We don't even have to dig. So
Okay.
Yeah. I like alternative two.
Yeah, that's the one we recommend.
Yeah, I can certainly find that that's consistent with the guidelines.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tough one.
thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks for coming in.
Yep. I was happy to come down here. Way better than sitting in my office.
Other stuff you want to talk about?
I'd really like to talk about that senior living facility and the height of those buildings. It's really ruining my.
Haven't heard
Yeah.
about that.
I happened to be in a planning commission meeting when there was a lot of
That's right.
brouhaha
You
about
had,
that.
you had to sit through the.
Yeah,
It was the hospital site.
yeah,
One. Yeah.
yeah. It was.
The
I was.
memorial care senior living
I was giving
facility.
no concession on the agenda for that one.
Yeah, to run around.
Yeah.
You know, if you had more people from the public that were there to speak against the project, we
Yeah.
would have probably put you first. But unfortunately, nobody was there. Nobody cared. Sorry.
It's funny because the people who care about wireless projects really care, but there's not usually a lot of them.
No.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, what? We're really making this a lot harder than it needs to be.
Yeah.
But like you said, we're a quasi-public utility, so Everybody wants
so,
this, but
so
just not in their
I mean, you
backyard.
actually raised a good point. The storage facility, I don't think that was within 300 feet of any residences.
No.
So the only people that got noticed for that were other commercial property owners. This one is within 300 feet of residential because it's from the property.
Oh, yeah, from the end of the
Yeah.
parcel,
Across San
Yeah.
Antonio there.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's there are some concerned residents around San Antonio Park. I would anticipate that they may.
Yeah. And if they do, I mean,
for
we can
that.
provide them information and say, look, this is what it is.
Yeah.
No, they may show up at the ZA.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'll be looking for pickleball discussion.
It could evolve.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked the question: is this going to be available for pickleballers on site? And if it is, I don't
Just
know how you
forget
can,
about it.
I don't know how you can work the algorithms, but
Well, I'm working with some of the design companies that we're going to conceal it as a giant pickleball paddle.
there you go.
That way people will know where the pickleball is played.
Yeah.
Here's the
You
court.
could suggest that, pickleball players and the equipment are not compatible, so the pickleball players are gonna have to vacate.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about the. It's a wiffle ball.
Is it hard plastic with holes
I think originally it's a wiffle ball. It's half a tennis court and it's a ping pong paddle. Those were the
Hybrid of
original.
all of
Those
it.
were the original features of pickleball. I don't know if there's.
I see in 4 years it will run its course.
Yeah, 100%.
Be perfectly honest with you, 4 or
Yeah.
5 years it's going to run its course because we've had paddle tennis, which was a tennis ball, and the paddle had holes in it, and it was not any noisier than tennis.
Paddle tennis was like a dead tennis ball.
Well, then it got to what they call a smash ball, where they popped the tennis ball in, put a hole in it, just to deflate it, so you could swing away as hard as you want. But it still didn't make a whole lot of noise.
Yeah.
But it'll go the route of, what was it, racquetball.
Yeah.
That was just hot and heavy there for
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
a whole
racquetball and
bunch of them that
handball.
just died.
Yeah, when I was in
So
college.
it's a
Yeah.
generational.
Well, and those courts were
Handball.
expensive.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, they took up a lot of
And now
square
there's
footage.
who knows how many vacant racquetball courts there are. I heard in Irvine at Great Park they're contemplating a cricket pitch because apparently that sport's now coming around.
I don't think
Interesting
Americans
sport,
have enough
cricket.
patience for that.
Have we figured out what they're doing out there with that cricket thing? I mean, I actually lived in, I don't know if this is all on tape here, but I lived in England when I was younger. And I was used to playing baseball, right, with the dead bat. So cricket was one of the sports. We had field hockey, cricket, and football, soccer. So we get out there and the coach gives me this paddle. And I'm like, I get to hit with this thing? It was just bing, right out of the park every time. They thought I was some superstar. It was easy hitting it with that paddle. I thought, this is great.
But you have to hit it after it bounces, right?
Not at that. When I don't remember the
I don't know.
details.
I don't know enough
like 8
about
years
cricket,
old
but-
or something. But I was a superstar in cricket.
And they're pretty close when they pitch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard not to hit the thing.
It's like-
And it just swings through the zone.
Just like calling.
Yeah.
They even had the two sticks there. They had to put it right between the two sticks. I thought that was a hot shot. Okay, moving on.
Well, I'm gonna
You're
head out.
Yes.
I'll follow you out.
Thank you all.
You're out of here.
Thank you
You're
all.
free
We'll
citizen.
see you again soon.
All right. New business, none.
Nice to see you.
Old business, none.
And,
Any oral or written?
just one more time, I'll be gone till May 14th,
Okay.
starting this weekend.
Well,
And-
have a safe trip. And a
Thank
fun
you.
one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It'll be great seeing your son.
Yeah, they just offered to keep him on till 28 in Italy. And he's seriously considering it.
Yeah.
Would it be Southern Italy? Or where in Italy?
Sicily,
Oh, okay.
Sigonella,
Which is where you're headed.
yeah.
The ball, the football.
He likes it.
Oh, he loves it. Okay, so I will make a motion that we adjourn to the next adjourned regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee, Wednesday, April 26th, 3 p.m. in the community room, 910 Calle Negocio.
Second?
I'm just trying to.
You gotta be there.
I know, the 20th. Oh, yeah. Second.
You second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.